Mr. Parker, do you blame anyone for Mike and Yvonne's death?
Yes, sir, in a way I do. Because they should have had a rear exit to those apartments. They could not get out through the front door. They were found in the shower, which was in the back part of their apartment. And had they had a back door and a fire escape, they could have gotten out.
How do you plan to go about getting something done about this problem?
I plan on going before the city council, as high as I have to go, anybody I have to go to make them put them in existing apartments and ones they're going to build, and for it to be a city ordinance to have a back door and a fire escape.
Certainly, every individual doesn't sell himself to the community as well as he could, but we are getting the job done. We've done a lot of projects in communities across this state, and I think the city fathers in all communities like what we're doing. We have good rapport with our communities, but one of the real keys is that it's up to the individual chapter to do the job that he said that he would do. And then the community has that respect for them if they get the job done. And that's up to each JC chapter.
As head of the Texas State JCs, do you have any way of reaching more young men?
Yes, I think that this has to be one of my top priorities.
This depot is not unlike 1,000 other depots, and Farmersville, Texas is not unlike 1,000 other small towns in this country. It's made up of a lot of salt-of-the-earth people who yet believe in working for a living, going to town on Saturday morning and church on Sunday. But Farmersville is different in one respect. It has two famous native sons, one famous, the other infamous. Audie Murphy, the war hero movie star, and Charles Watson, the accused slayer of 7 persons in California. Audie Murphy grew up quietly here. He was an orphan who went only to the 6th grade. Charlie Reich, who runs the drugstore here in Farmersville, told me that he only remembers Artie because, in those days, he had a bad habit of messing up his comic book section and never buying a comic book. Nobody noticed much when Artie Murphy went off to war. But they certainly noticed when national magazines began landing on those same newsstands where Artie Murphy once messed up the comic sections. Those magazines told how almost single-handedly he captured an enemy garrison, how, though wounded, by himself he turned back an attack by 250 Germans and 5 tanks. Artie Murphy came home in 1945 with 3 wounds and 14 major medals. He came home at the head of a parade, and about the greatest thing that had ever happened to Farmersville, Texas. He stayed around Farmersville long enough to whip the town bully for berating his medals, then he went off to Hollywood to make motion pictures. Charles Watson grew up in the little 2-store highway community of Copeville just outside Farmersville. He worked in his parents' store and taught Sunday school at the church across the highway. At Farmersville High School, he was a star athlete. 3 years he made the all-district team in football. He was a state record holder in track. He also was an A and B student. He was voted most versatile by his classmates. Watson went off to college at North Texas State University, but in his second year there, he strangely dropped out and went to California. Charles Watson returned home quietly last winter, a bearded, introverted, different Charles Watson. Then came the shocking realization to this community that their high school hero had been arrested. He was charged with the brutal, ritualistic slayings of actress Sharon Tate and 6 others in California. Charles Watson sits in this jail in McKinney today, awaiting extradition to California. He will face those charges there. 2 native sons, 1 famous, 1 infamous. To the people of Farmersville and Copeville, it's all a little frightening. It means that those big city evils they have been hearing about and reading about for so long, at last have invaded their communities. Perhaps parents in a lot of small towns should be just a little afraid. This is Tommy Ayers in Farmersville for Channel 8 News.
Mr. Parker, what are your feelings concerning the rear egress to the apartment?
Well, I feel that they should have them on all of them. I feel that they should have a back door, a fire escape, and I think they should have one. Should be made to put one on all of them.
Mine might be alive today.
Yes, sir, they would have been.
Captain, what is the position of the fire department in this case?
Well, I would state that the fire department did a very good job stopping the fire, but it was so intense in that one area and spread so fast, it was impossible for some of the occupants to evacuate.
Has the fire department established any sort of policy concerning rear egresses?
Well, the fire department always has been for a second means of exit from every dwelling unit.
Do you think there might be something done about it now? And if so, do you think the department will take the lead in this matter?
Well, whether it would be the department or the building inspector, I wouldn't definitely state, since it is a building code problem.
Do you think there might be some action before the city council within a short time?
Well, let's hope that we might have something come up.
Are there other cities in the state that still require the rear exit?
I couldn't definitely state, although there were 2 means of egress from the building itself, and the code does require 2 means of egress. That's from the corridor and not the unit. In other words, once a person evacuates from a unit or dwelling unit into a corridor, there are 2 means of egress, and there were in this case. It was just one of those things that happened, and the fire spread so fast that people didn't have much of a chance or didn't sufficient warning to evacuate in time.
Malcolm, can you describe the resolutions that were passed during the past convention?
Yes, the main resolution that I was most proud of was a resolution that stated that we are opposed to any act of violence, regardless. I think that every citizen of the United States has the right to dissent. But we stated in this resolution that any act of violence, regardless of whether it was for dissent or what, we could not tolerate, and we urge all people to fight against any act of violence for any reason. We oppose this. And furthermore, we commend the President of the United States, not as Mr. Nixon, but as our President, to continue his efforts. And we urge Congress and the people of the United States to unite for a lasting peace in Southeast Asia.
Well, we've been trying to get a theater of this kind. We've been interested in a theater of this kind the last 10 years. We've had several plays which had practically all black cast, but we could never find a group of blacks who really wanted to devote themselves to developing a black theater before. I don't think they feel they have time to write little light, amusing plays, which will come later, I think, But right now, the next, I should think, 10 or 15 years, it's going to be very strong, probably mostly protest plays, plays which discuss the problems which they're having in their life and relationship with themselves and with the whites and with the world at large.
Micah Moorhead was 18 years old, a black kid living in the Hall Street area in North Dallas, shot in North Dallas. He was shot down by the police department for allegedly attempted burglary, whatever that means. He comes from a poor family that lives in the projects in North Dallas. Nothing has been done about it. Nothing has been said about it. He was unarmed. No, he had not been convicted of any crime other than running from the police department when a silent burglary alarm went off. And from what my understanding is, a large truck can set off a silent burglary alarm. Now, when the burglary alarm went off and the police department showed up, the young men started running. And they said, halt, and he halted and stuck his hands up. And he was shot 3 times in the back. Knocked down, got up and ran some more and fell down again. And then while he was on the ground bleeding, pleading for his life, he was shot some more. Right. Now we have some eyewitnesses. One of the young men is being harassed and intimidated by the police department right now, that if he testified based on what he saw and witnessed, they're going to get him next.
How long will your evaluation run?
We will be on site for 3 days, and then an evaluation report. We will be back in the office at which time the data that we collect will be analyzed and a report will be formed in the office from that information. The persons who are on site will take part in that analysis, but there will be some other persons involved in the analysis also.
Just how will you go about analyzing the program here? Will you speak to the department heads?
We will be speaking to department heads. We will be speaking to representatives from the board, the city and county officials, representatives from the target areas. Hopefully we'll reach all sections of the community.
Mrs. Schultz, do you feel that at this point the block partnership has failed in its fair part homeowners' efforts?
No.
What alternatives are left to the homeowners, and what will you, as the block partnership associated with them, recommend that they do right now?
Well, we will recommend that the negotiations, which the mayor just stated, are open, be considered by the homeowners, and see if that can be a step that they would be willing to take. If they don't, if they feel this isn't an approach they wish to make at this point, then of course they have the option of going back into condemnation proceedings.
Do you feel that the effort has been hurt by what the mayor charges as outside agitation?
Of what? The effort
of the homeowners, the effort of the negotiations?
It's possible that it has been.
Let us say SCLC.
I don't think it would matter what group. SCLC is probably the most non-violent group of any that might have identified itself with the problem.
Well, it's like anything. I believe it's the identification of the automobile. We all have owned or driven one at one time or another, and we've all taken pride in some type of a car, make or model, regardless of whether it's a Chevrolet, Ford, or Plymouth. And it's they can sit up there and they can cheer and enjoy seeing their particular model car win, even though theirs may not be the 200-mile-an-hour car. it's still something they kind of identify with. And it's a very quick, instant sport. You don't have to sit and wait for 3.5 hours to see who's going to win this particular race. There's a race going on in front of them at all times. And another thing that makes it popular is that it is a spectator participant sport, because you can watch the race one weekend, and if you want to go race your car the next, you can. And the spectators can go into the pits, talk to drivers, visit with them, look at the cars. All they have to do is buy insurance, which costs about $1 for a pit pass, and this enables them to go over and look at these pieces of machinery that in most races, like your Indy type racing, they can't do this. They're not allowed in the pits where the racers and the drivers are, or the race cars. They can sit and watch them go around the track, and that's as close as they can get to them.
Mr. Otepka, are some of the radical students who are fomenting dissent on our campuses, are they communist?
I'm not prepared to make any final judgment on this. I can only react to these groups and organizations the same manner that the average citizen reacts to them, is that they are fomenting disorder. They're ostensibly breaking our laws. I think there should be a proper form in the United States government to render a determination to the American people so they would know who these leaders are, what their philosophy, tactics are, and who is behind them.
Why are so many in our country, and I guess we especially think of our young people, why are they buying the leftist line in regard to Vietnam?
I have no answer to that. I think this is a matter for competent authorities and other agencies having jurisdiction over the subject matter. I think I could answer that eventually in an official capacity as soon as the evidence is presented to me formally in connection with my duties in the Subversive Activities Control Board. I can't answer it now.
We reached some tentative agreements on the 3 items that we were disputing at the recent school board meeting when the school board adopted guidelines for wages and salaries. We've reached tentative agreement that we believe that Dallas salaries should be competitive nationally. We've reached agreement that we believe that, and the administration believes that teachers in Dallas should have continuing contract, and we've reached agreement that we are both opposed to merit pay for teachers.
Now, this was submitted to the group this afternoon. What was the feeling at that time of the classroom teachers?
Well, it's hard to say what their feeling was. We are very pleased that we have been able to negotiate these 3 tentative agreements. We're waiting to see the document or the amendments that we will propose to the document that the board adopted before we say that we have finally agreed to any of this.
Well, there were several disagreements, the 3 main ones. Did you encounter any opposition from Dr. Estes and his staff?
No, I think whatever opposition was caused by a breakdown in communications.
The position that the church and the many other people share with us is that this fetal life begins with conception, and that fetal life has rights, and that those rights cannot be violated any more than the rights that you and I have regarding our life. But you see, I believe there's a great difference there between what that moral position that the church takes and will defend, and I as a priest certainly hold, and what you might call the legal position that a Catholic or a Christian, any person might hold in regard to the law.
I believe that it is a potential life, therefore great care must be taken whether or not this potential life should be frustrated. But I've had to conclude that in some situations, to permit the birth to occur produces more evil than would an abortion or the termination of pregnancy.
all the area from this point here, from University of Dallas to the end of the runway, out this far, would be, any residence constructed there would be soundproofed. The soundproofing was to the extent that one could listen to radio and television without interruption, or telephone conversations and things of that nature, and also special consideration was given to bedrooms so they could fall asleep at night. It was soundproofed much better than with the kitchens and activity areas. If that same criteria were to be extended here, which we cannot make the judgment at this time that the same criteria would exist because there are different factors involved in it, but that would come from a line extending through Park Cities all the way on out past the North Central Expressway up here, Green Hill School, on around down this way to near Fair Park, encompassing all of this area. If that same criteria were applied to it, every resident in that area would need to be soundproofed.
The so-called Catholic position, I believe, should not be called a Catholic position. From a standpoint of morality, I think that the moral position which Catholics defend is held by a great number of people other than Catholics. Many people in the world, Christian and non-Christian alike, would agree that the basic moral stand that the fetal life must be protected and its rights must be assured is one that we would say is our moral position. And we would say that this is always going to be upheld until such time as there would be a clear indication, and everybody would be in total agreement, that this fetus, that the life of this fetus, the actual beginning of the human person's life, could be determined. At this time, this is a very disputed point.
Part of my work at Southern Methodist University is counseling. Occasionally there come to me girls, teenagers, pregnant, when marriage does not seem to be indicated, when romance is not involved, when this is a sin of youth and of passion and not a decision made calmly, when it's the good girls that get involved, not the promiscuous girls. The promiscuous girls already know what to do and where to go. And one day, with a counselee sitting in front of me with this problem, I began to see my daughter through her eyes. I wondered, what would I do if my daughter had become pregnant and marriage was not indicated, when there seemed to be no good solution? And gradually my mind changed, so that now I do believe that in some situations, in some cases, abortion should be a matter between the mother, her doctor, and her spiritual counselor.
we do not think that it is for us to try and self-righteously advise others how to settle their own problems, because we were very resentful when others were doing the same to us. Now, however, the situation in Southeast Asia is a matter of great concern to all the world, and believe me, we Nigerians have nothing but the strongest desire that what is best for the people concerned there should be the outcome of any peace talks. Any formula, under whatever umbrella, whatever platform that would produce peace there and would meet the best interests of the people there would be satisfactory to not only to Nigeria, but I think to a majority of the world.
Carl, I was asked to come to Detroit at the request of their city clerk, which is an elected official there, who serves their city council, a 9-member council. They had advertised for bids for voting machines or for voting equipment, and they had already made the determination that they wanted to buy punch card equipment, so there was no debate between lever-type machines or punch card machines. There was no debate in their mind between what company they wanted to do business with, because they had already opened the bids and they knew who low bidder was. And so all those points had been covered. They were concerned because of some of the comments and criticisms that they had heard that had been telephoned there out of Dallas. They had heard from Judge Sterrett, they had heard from Larry Murdoch, and they had heard from Tom Ellis. And they were concerned because of these telephone calls, criticizing the use of data media system.
This building is the Johnson County Courthouse, located in the city of Cleburne, south of Fort Worth. It's closed today, along with the municipal governmental bodies of most of the cities of Johnson County, as its employees help private residents in Operation Cleanup.